Welcome to the Boardroom Zen. I am your host, Megha Joshi. In this show, we hear the untold stories and best practices from world-class business executives on how they deal with pressure and setbacks in the boardroom and beyond. Yes, these business leaders are no superhumans, but they have found their unique formula to stay grounded and bring their A game to the table amidst the chaos. So let's begin. Our guest today joins us from Denver, Colorado. She's a telecom executive that excels in go-to-market strategy for large-scale product deployments. She exemplifies a dot connector mindset that allows her to consider the cross-functional impacts of a technology solution while balancing thinking strategically. She serves as the Group Vice President, Technology Delivery at Charter Communications, where she identifies opportunities for quicker time to market while instituting standard practices across the organization for high-impact product launches. Please join me in welcoming Kim Carroll to the show. Kim, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Megha. I am humbled to be here. Thank you.
Kim, I'd love to start with the first question. You and I actually go back in time. We've known each other for the past 7 years. And I vividly recall the very first time when I met you in person in 2017. This was back in the days where you were leading a major product launch for the organization. And I have to say, I was totally blown away by the sheer grace, the confidence, and the finesse with which you carried yourself and facilitated many crucial conversations. Could you talk a little bit about how you've been able to build that quintessential executive presence?
Yes, well, thank you very much for the compliment, Megha. It is with all sincerity that I'm humbled to receive a compliment like that from you and to know that I made such a positive impression because I think so highly of you. And certainly as a female leader, I endeavor and hope that I can make a positive impression, not only on women, but of course on men. So my kind of daily mantra is, I just want to lead by example. There's a lot of words that individuals can say, but really it's what you do that matters. So in terms of how did I build this presence, gosh, it's such a great question. And I had to pause and kind of reflect on it a bit because I hadn't really thought about it specifically. But as I did think through it, there's a few things that I think probably influenced and got me to where I am and gave me some of that presence. But to start off with, I recall my very first job out of college was I was selling long distance minutes. So do you recall those days way back when, which by the way is aging myself, but long distance used to be billed by the minute, right? And not only was it billed by the minute, but it was like in a best case scenario, $1 a minute. And furthermore, often we would wait till 5 o'clock at night to get the lower price, or we would wait and make phone calls on the weekend in order to keep our bill a little bit reasonable. And it's crazy to think that that used to be the way that it was. And I also just realized I have 2 teenage daughters, and I'm sure that they would be kind of thinking I was talking something foreign and have no idea that they used to be tethered to a wall and have to pay to talk to people. But in any case, there was some moments there that I think might have helped me. But I had a mentor at the time, and I remember he specifically told me, hey, Kim, you're like a sponge. And he said, what I mean by that is I watch you observe. He'd been in the industry a lot longer than I had. And he just reflected and offered to me that he felt like he could tell that I really wanted to learn and that I would emulate some of the behaviors that I saw and that I was mindful and was actually paying attention. So I guess then, Megha, when I fast forward, I think through that comment always stuck with me is that, hey, be a sponge. And then in my professional career, specifically here at my current company, which is Charter, I had a wonderful female mentor, and she gave me this opportunity to join a lot of the senior executive meetings that you're actually familiar with, of course. And in addition to coaching me ahead of time about kind of the do's and the don'ts, what I just did is because I was given that opportunity, I would just listen in and I would observe. I would pay close attention to the room, right? I would read the room. I would notice behaviors that were impressive to me, and sometimes behaviors or body language or presence that I didn't feel was great. And I think it just stuck with me that I was learning and mentally making notes of the type of presence that I wanted to have, and then how I actually implemented that. There's no real magic to it except being observant and watching other people and knowing this is the type of presence I want to have, this is the type of presence I don't want to have, and then trying to just keep learning from that.
Wow. And so what I heard you say is you were a student in the boardrooms and you were watching people and what worked and what didn't, and you were deciphering and figuring out your own unique style. And I think that's what is so special about you, Kim, the way I've observed you over the years, is that it's not just your choice of words, it's your overall presence, the body language, the eye contact, it's the subtle movement of executives like you that set you apart. Right? And so thank you for sharing that. You also mentioned the element of mentorship, and that early on in your career, you found a mentor that was able to help you redirect in ways that shaped you. And so could you tell me more about how you look at mentorship? And, as you rise up, does that model change for you in any way?
Mentors are amazing and an opportunity that none of us should take for granted. I think oftentimes you might underestimate the power of a mentor, right? And a mentor doesn't have to be formal. The person who I'm referring to happened to actually also be my boss. And she'd say, we never had a formal mentoring relationship. I didn't even know I was your mentor. And I guess part of that is because, again, I had chosen to really observe and learn from somebody who I had great respect for. And then I think I do continue to do it, right? I'm fortunate to work at a company where there are some really amazing leaders, and I just want to learn from them, and I feel lucky to be in their presence. And I take notes, like handwritten notes sometimes when people say things that I think are really insightful. And I do that just because we all know that when you write things down, you tend to remember it longer. And then every once in a while, when I flip through my notebook, I'll see it written there again. And then over time, it sort of just emulates with you. And then the next thing you know, you're borrowing their awesome phrases and you remember how wonderful you thought they sounded. And so I just try to continue to do that. And again, I don't take for granted any opportunity that I have to learn from people who I have a great amount of respect for, and a great privilege to me and a great compliment will be when and if people are wanting to emulate things that I do.
Right. And so well said, Kim. I could not agree more. You and I have been part of the same organization. I've been with Charter for over 5.5 years. And the whole idea of mentorship and how the executive team grows its leaders and people at large is very impressive. And so thank you for sharing that. Next, Kim, I'd love to dig into a little bit of your early years and any formative moments you may want to share with the audience here.
I've always remembered this scenario, and it's interesting to talk about because you're going to find that it was kind of at the time seemed like a negative experience. But when I think back to that original opportunity right out of college, I was in sales, and we're talking business to business sales. And it was a large telco at the time, and they had a very rigorous training. In fact, it was called University, and we went away for 2 weeks to Atlanta, Georgia, and basically had school. And it was all about how to be successful at selling. Everything from, you might be familiar with ABCs of sales, that's always be closing. We were taught things to ABC, always be closing. And at the end of a meeting, as an example, we had to follow the script. And we would take a piece of paper, we would put it in front of our decision maker, and we would kind of get this. So, it makes sense that if you're paying $1 a minute today, and if I could cut your bill by 2/3, of course you would say yes, right?
Right.
And just like you're doing, you head nod, you say yes. I hand you the piece of paper and the pen and I say, okay, let's get this deal done. And then you're taught to be silent. The next person to speak is sort of the loser, if you will. If I speak, I ruined the opportunity because I just put the pen in front of the individual. But anyways, as part of that, one of the things that we were taught was, again, we're talking small businesses, spent a couple $100 a month on their telecommunications, not anything like a charter-sized company. But we were taught that the decision makers are the owners of the business and that we would be likely wasting our time if we weren't in front of the owner. So we were just taught rigorously to go in, and if the owner's not there or you can't get past the front desk, to just politely say, okay, tell Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so I was here, and you just keep trying, right? Once a week, every other week. And at one point, a contact that I'd been trying to get into, and the individual at the front desk was lovely, and I felt like I was always very kind and genuine and sincere. And at some point, she decided to tell me basically that I had disrespected her and that it was an insult that I felt like I couldn't speak to her, that she wasn't the decision maker. And the couple of lessons learned there was, because she felt that way about me, she was never going to let me talk to the decision maker. And it was this moment of her perception and my perception were so vastly different. I remember just feeling genuinely heartbroken, embarrassed, sad. I walked away from there. You go out, you get back in your car, and I cried because in my mind, I couldn't believe that the perception that I thought I was giving off, which was that I was coming in, I was being kind, but I was specific that I wanted to speak to the owner of the company and that I'd made such kind of a negative impression on her. So I always carry with me too, perception is reality. And it really is, meaning you can't change somebody else's perception. And even if you really believe their perception is so far from reality or the truth, it's their truth and it's their reality. And so somehow that's always stuck with me. And certainly with my kids, I think about that a lot, where I'm always trying to be the parent and invoke in them all the wisdom that I feel I have that they need. And I have to remember that, A, they're teenagers, they're not even listening to me, and that I can't change their reality, even though I think it's a little distorted. Instead, I need to work on perception as they see it. Something that I just thought, I'm never going to take for granted how I might be coming across to somebody and make a concerted effort to just really realize that there's more to the story. And maybe the person, in this case at the front desk, has a lot more power than I realized she did.
Yes, and she sure did. And obviously, it was all unintentional on your part. You didn't even recognize how she was experiencing you in that moment.
Right.
And what you said here is perception is reality. How we are perceived, it is something we got to be cognizant of. Having said that, you also stress on the fact that we can only control our inner reality, not the external world, right? The other people, their beliefs, we only have so much control over it. So the most we can do is have control over how we show up and what we believe in and stand by. I'd love to switch gears to the next question, where I'm just intrigued to hear your perspective. I know you pursue a very active lifestyle. In fact, you and I have gone on long hikes in beautiful Colorado in the past. Yeah. And so in what ways do you believe that your physical well-being contributes to your professional success? And what's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that comes to mind is this is a cliche, and as cliche as it sounds, to me, it is an absolute truth. But I've found in my professional career that there never has been a problem so big or so complicated that I couldn't personally solve by just getting out of the environment and going for a walk, taking deep breaths. I do yoga. I love yoga. I'm very sold on the idea of 3 or 5 or 10 very deep breaths, take emotion out of whatever you're feeling in that particular moment. And I look back to when I early on started to practice yoga, because prior to that, I was only a hardcore, like cardio, really intense, active type stuff. And somewhere I realized that yoga would be a good benefit too. But I didn't believe in the moment necessarily in the breathing and the impact that it might have. But I can look back to every hard problem and I now know I don't get worked up about it. I just sort of say, you know what? All I got to do is leave for a few minutes, go for a walk, leave work, leave the building, go to yoga. And then when I get home, the solution is going to seem so much clearer than it had before. And so that's just a added benefit to my love and passion for just being active, because I do that too. I love it. It's for the mind, it's for the soul, it's for all of those things. And of course, you feel better about yourself. So I'm committed to it. I'm dedicated. I'm self-motivated when it comes to that. I do a lot of things on my own, like going for runs before work. And to me, it really is that feeling of every day we take a shower and we brush our teeth. And if we don't, something doesn't feel right. And I have that same feeling with exercise. And I know some people think that's really strange, but I'm just saying it as a truth, where if I have come to the office and for some reason I didn't work out that morning, it's that feeling of, I forgot to brush my teeth or didn't take a shower. So I hold it very sacred that I believe exercise is important for so many reasons.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly there, Kim. I'm a big believer in not just working out our mind, but our bodies every day. And the amount of clarity that comes with taking care of our physical body, it's unbelievable. You can actually accomplish so much more in an hour than you would have spent 3 hours just running around in circles. I'd love to dig into another space. I know you are a role model and inspiration for many women out there. And so as a women executive, have you ever felt limited by your gender in any way? And what piece of advice may you have for other aspiring women leaders on how to overcome any professional barriers?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't felt so much that there was ever, for me, a gender issue. I do recall earlier on emotion being something that could play into your ability to be as successful as you want to be. And I think there's a stereotype, of course, that women might wear their emotions a little more broadly or on our sleeves. And that could be true. I think that's also why it makes women unique. But I also think it can help in a lot of ways. So I felt like, particularly in my company, they've actually given me so many opportunities, training opportunities, development opportunities, leadership opportunities, where it's very specific and purposeful to this company wanting women executives and to keep, if you will, the funnel there, because they recognize the diversity that it brings and just kind of the different perspectives, and that those are important. So I've been very fortunate in that the company has proactively, like I said, sent me to trainings and development opportunities. And then, of course, made any opportunity available if I wanted to pursue it. So I think the thing that I reflect on that might have ever held me back was that concept of taking things personally. So I think a light clicked at some point in my career where I realized that most things actually aren't personal. And usually it's us individually that believed it was personal and it really wasn't. So I try to remind myself often if I'm in a discussion where I feel like maybe my idea wasn't well received or somebody else in the room's idea wasn't well received. It's not personal. It's very much keep the kind of the emotion out of it. And it's just, hey, some ideas are really great. Other ideas are not so great. And the moment you, I think, can take the emotion out of it to some extent, you start to not feel so much like it's male versus female.
I have to say you hit the nail on the head. We as women carry our emotions on our sleeve, right? And I was the same way in my early years. I would tie myself to the success of the project, where the failure of the project would be a reflection on myself as a person. And it wasn't true. I had to tell myself that that I didn't have to internalize all those feelings, the failure or the success. And it was a learning curve, to be honest. And having said that, with women leaders, they are also able to turn that around, and it becomes their superpower, their emotional intelligence, and the way they can read people and even connect with other people at a whole different, new, deeper level, which gives them their unique selling proposition, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's so spot on. And I think your point, there's this, as a woman, we have some capabilities, some strengths that are just different than what the males bring to the table. And recently I've noticed and had a couple of men executives specifically say, I really want more diversity on my leadership team. And I really am looking for women leaders because there's just such a balance there, right? It balances the room out. It keeps everything a little more stable. And so I felt that it was wonderful that I think we're in a time now, and this would be kind of my advice to aspiring women, is that I believe the pendulum has actually shifted a little bit, and there's a concerted effort to seek out women leaders. And so to the extent that that is what you aspired to do, the opportunity is so great there because there's specific searching for that quality. And so there's opportunities that are just waiting for you to come to them and help seek them out.
Yes, totally. Kim, what an incredible discussion this has been. Thank you for carving time for us. It has been an absolute delight to have you on the show.
Thank you.
There is no better time than now to build resilience, lead mindfully and with purpose. We all deserve to live our very best life. This show is brought to you by The Resilient Human, a company on a mission to develop authentic leaders that thrive amidst pressure and have the courage to write their own story. A sincere thanks to all my listeners for the precious time and presence. If you genuinely enjoyed the show, I'd love for you to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite listening platform. Be well, and I can't wait to see you at the next episode of The Boardroom Zen.